That's all I got. Got a great
Tanner, you ready? Ready? Okay, I think we're ready. Everyone, good? All right, good morning, everyone. I appreciate you all being here today, and I appreciate your patience this morning. We're here to talk about public safety, something that is very, very important to all of us. And before I get into the PROTECT Act, the bill that we've introduced, I just wanted to talk about how we got to where we are today. Javier Justice, he was a Rochester man, is a Rochester man, who was recently arrested for allegedly stabbing to death a 30-year-old woman, Abigail Perez, during an argument. Just weeks earlier, he was accused of assaulting Abigail. He was charged with assault, with larceny, and with obstruction of breathing, and he was released. He was already under indictment for a 2023 gun crime. But today, Abigail's gone, and her children don't have a mother. That should have never, ever happened, never happened. And I blame our laws for contributing to those kids not having a mother here on this earth with them. And that's exactly why I introduced this legislation. So I think everyone here would probably agree with me that we get asked all the time, what are we doing? What is the state of New York doing? What laws do we have on the books to prevent this type of thing from happening? Because it's happening over and over and over again. And I think that's a great question. People expect lawmakers to fix laws that are not working, especially those laws that are related to the public safety. So it's frustrating for me as a state senator to hear from some of my colleagues, whether it's the governor, whether it's the leaders of the Senate, the Assembly, to talk about how public safety is their number one concern. Because if it was their number one concern, why do we have things like what happened to Abigail? Why does that continue? Why aren't we fixing our broken laws? We need to fix them now, because every single day that we wait, that we don't, another person loses their life. Another business is destroyed. But the good news is, the reason why we're here is because we have a common sense fix. It's a bipartisan fix that will allow law enforcement to continue doing their jobs, and it will give our courts the tools that they need to make more informed decisions and to hold those individuals who are a danger to our communities. It's legislation called the PROTECT Act. Under the PROTECT Act, judges would be required, I want to be very clear, they would be required to complete a standardized assessment to make informed decisions on whether or not an individual who's charged with a felony or a Class A misdemeanor is a threat to themselves or to the community and should be held pre-trial. Also under the PROTECT Act, and I think this is incredibly important, repeat offenders, also who are arrested for a new felony or a Class 8 misdemeanor offense while on pretrial release, they will be required to remain in custody unless a judge goes through the process and determines that their risk of reoffending has been mitigated. And I want to point out that we were very careful when we were drafting this legislation, and we included what I consider 4 very important critical safeguards. The first is that judges must make pretrial custody determinations based on risk, based on threat and risk, and not on a person's ability to pay bail. The second is that every pretrial custody decision must be made within 48 hours. That ensures that everyone is having a timely judicial review. Nobody is languishing in our jails. The third is that the standardized assessment form that the judges will be required to use will be drafted by the Department of Criminal Justice, which helps eliminate any concerns about bias. And the fourth is that under the PROTECT Act, look, we realize that there are a number of mental health issues that are contributing to crimes. So under the PROTECT Act, we encourage engaging in mental services when and where they're needed. So just a little bit more about the PROTECT Act. I am so very proud of the team effort that went into really drafting this bill. Monroe County Sheriff Todd Baxter, who's here with us today, he's been a great partner and a leader with this effort. The sheriff has worked so closely with my office. He's worked with the consortiums for safer communities across upstate New York. And again, he's just been a tremendous leader with this effort. The consortiums, I want to mention quickly, they're comprised of religious leaders, business leaders, representatives from nonprofit organizations, and elected officials from every single level. We have several consortium members here today, including Gary Rogers and Mike Reed. Thank you both for being here today. Throughout the drafting of this bill, we listened very closely to the feedback that we received, and we made adjustments to the bill. And the result of this team effort, this outreach and collaboration, is truly a common sense bipartisan policy. And I want to be really clear about this. The PROTECT Act balances fairness for the accused and the need to protect the public from dangerous offenders. It's a good policy. It's great policy. And our bill has received statewide support from the New York State Sheriff's Association, the consortiums for safe communities, like I said, from across upstate New York, Lifespan of Greater Rochester, the Monroe County Association of Police Chiefs, the New York State Car Wash Association, and so many other organizations and local municipalities. We owe it to every single victim and to every person who simply wants to feel safe and live without fear to enable the PROTECT Act. So we've been traveling across the state. This is the third press conference that we've had. We've been garnering and growing our support for the PROTECT Act and calling on Governor Hochul. She's working on her budget for the next fiscal year. We're calling on her to include the PROTECT Act language in her budget. I know some people ask me, why aren't you just trying to get the bill passed? I'd love to get this bill passed through the Assembly and the Senate and have the governor sign it into law, but that's not the reality of New York State at this point. It's going to be very difficult to get the majority to bring this bill to the floor for a vote. But we can, the governor can, put the language into her budget and it can be voted on and passed that way. So I'm calling on everyone, if you're interested in helping us push to get the PROTECT Act enacted, to please call, email the governor. You can go to my website, my Facebook page. You could sign our petition. You could get the information on how to reach out to the governor's office. But this is something that is so reasonable and so common sense, and we need to get it done. So at this point, it is truly my privilege to call up County Executive Ryan McMahon. He is someone who truly knows about the impact of public safety on individuals, on families, and our seniors, and impact that it's having on businesses. And Ryan, I want to thank you and DA Fitzpatrick for allowing us to be here today, for hosting this event with us.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Clear my mess out of your way.
Thanks, Senator. And again, I want to thank the DA for hosting us today. I'll run out the place
You
to you
pay
anytime.
for it.
Yeah, so now, obviously, first off, for all of the law enforcement partners in the room, I just want to give you a heartfelt thanks. Public safety is literally the most important responsibility we have as government leaders, whether you're at the federal level, the state level, or the local level. There is no one else to do the job but us. And I want to thank Senator Helming and Senator Walczak for coming up with common sense reforms. And I've been around for a little while, and I know that sometimes well-intentioned people pass laws and things don't work out. And the way I always look at our responsibility is, it's our responsibility when you have data, when you look at the data, you analyze the data, you're talking to the people on the streets, in the field, prosecuting the crimes, you listen and you pivot. And that's what good leaders do. And I think right now this gives us the opportunity to look at some of the laws that have been passed since I've been in this role that have clearly had a negative impact. I don't believe necessarily that was the intention of some of the laws, but it's happened. And this is a way to correct the course. And certainly it's a way for us to do two things. One, to value the rights of victims more than the rights of criminals, and two, not to normalize crime. You will see a lot of data points and a lot of good work being done by the men and women in this room and on the streets about crime rates going down. But the reality is, if there's public policy that allows for just one crime to happen where it shouldn't have, then we haven't done our job well. And so I'm very happy to be here today to support Senator you and Senator you in your efforts and to add my voice to that. And I'm happy to be here today to support these men and women who do such a great job keeping us safe. And I'll say one of the individuals who he is literally the best prosecutor in the United States of America, respected by his peers, second to no one in the state, who has seen it all and who has done it all, is our DA here in Onondaga County. And I'm so proud to have learned so much from him and so proud to call him my friend, Bill Fitzpatrick.
Thanks, Rod. Thank you. Thank you, Rod. Very nice of you to say that. First of all, to my Jewish brothers and sisters, best wishes today, Yom Kippur, as you celebrate with family and friends. Appropriately, a Day of Atonement. There's some people that passed this statute that could use some atoning to do, but how did we get to that point? So let's take the clock back to 2019. For the previous decade and a half, the state of New York had reduced its state prison population by 50%. At the same time, violent crime went down 60%. I call it the New York miracle. So when a certain faction of the Democratic Party took over the state legislature, what do you think is the first thing that they would have addressed? Mass transportation? How about our education system, where 40–50% of our high school graduates can't read their diplomas? How about that? How about health care? How about things that really needed addressing? But they went out with a solution in search of a problem and decided they were going to change the criminal justice system in New York. If I'm building a plane, one of the people I'm going to consult is a pilot, because I want to know what he or she has to go through to fly that plane, to make it safe, to make it affordable, to make it practical. These statutes regarding bail reform, raise the age, discovery, were passed with zero input from prosecutors. They were essentially written by the Legal Aid and Innocence Project organizations in New York City, and we're stuck with them. And I congratulate my two colleagues and friends, our senators, who have decided to try to do something about it. However, Don Quixote-ish it may be, that at least somebody is making an effort. For those of you in town, you certainly know this story. For those of you from media in upstate New York, a number of years ago, there was a 93-year-old woman by the name of Connie Turi, and she was a teacher. And by all accounts, she was a very accomplished, very educated woman. She liked to travel the world, and she lived in a particularly difficult part of the city in the Skyline Apartments, and people were saying, well, why did she live there? Or she should be out in the suburbs. Well, I'm sorry, we don't get to dictate to people where they live. That was Connie's apartment. She'd been there for 30 years. She loved it there, and overwhelming majority of people in Skyline loved her as well. While she was enjoying the last week of her life, a young woman downstairs from here was being arraigned on her 5th pending felony. Not making that up. They're not related to each other. 5 separate felonies. A young woman, 24 years old. Now, do you think that person is crying out for some type of help? Do you think that person, his best interest was served by a judge saying, I'm going to let you out according to statute, the least restrictive means necessary? I'm going to just let you out with no conditions at all whatsoever over my office's stern objection? And a week later, both of those lives were ruined because Connie is deceased. There were Syracuse cops that went to that scene that I personally have known for decades that are still getting counseling because of what they saw in that apartment. That was unnecessary, needless, and wrong. And Victoria Affett is now serving probably the next, I think, 35 years of her life in state prison. A great success story for bail reform. This is a data-driven system that the senator has proposed. It is race neutral. It is driven by studies and scientific background. It's been successful in other states. I remember when the bail argument was being made, people kept saying, well, we want New York to be like New Jersey. Okay, New Jersey uses a system similar to this. And guess what? It works. 49 other states allow a judge to consider the dangerousness and the background of a defendant before them. I like being unique, but not for that reason.
Yeah.
And you know what else is happening? And this is insidious, and it's very, very underreported. We have 8 diversionary courts in Onondaga County. Each one of them started by me, a prosecutor. Not by a judge, not by the Innocence Project, diversionary courts. We address a problem: alcohol, drug abuse, domestic violence, mental health, post-traumatic stress disorder for our returning veterans. Those courts now have seen a over 50% drop in participants. Those are people that would have been put into the treatment court, successfully completed that court, and gone out to live productive lives. Instead, they're being rotated back and forth in the criminal justice system, victimizing people in Onondaga County and central New York. So I would really ask you, the press, to get this message out. It is literally absolutely brilliant and common sense and something that needs to be done. It should never be a partisan issue. It has nothing to do with Democrat or Republican. It has to do with public safety. And now it's my pleasure to turn the mic over to my sheriff. You see, for those of you from out of town, his name isn't really Tobias. Nobody would be that cruel to name a child Tobias. It's Toby Shelley, my sheriff. Toby, come on up, brother.
My mother was that cruel to name me Tobias. I must have drawn the short straw, because following our district attorney speaking is a difficult task. If you look around the room, you will see a very powerful group. And it shows that protecting our communities is a lot more important than our politics or political party. And this PROTECT Act isn't about politics. It's about doing the right thing. It's about common sense. It's not about punishing people for being poor. It's quite the opposite. The PROTECT Act makes sure that people who aren't dangerous and will show up to court don't simply sit in jail because they don't have enough money to make bail. It makes sure that violent repeat offenders and those who threaten the public can be held at trial. This is a very important act. I totally support it. I'm not a long-winded person, so I'm going to introduce the next person coming, a good friend of mine, a fellow sheriff. As an Air Force veteran, I'm happy to be in front of and introduce an Army veteran. He gets the joke. With that, Sheriff Todd Baxter.
So we've been yelling and screaming since early 2019 about some of these reforms that were coming down what we call the I-90 corridor, being fed to us, and we had no input into it, has already been said. And all the yelling and screaming law enforcement's done and district attorney's office done really didn't get the ear of anybody. We understand that. So we formed these consortiums. We got victims of crimes. We got inner city pastors. We got business owners together. And if you ever look at the letter that we have signed, we have bookends of our community signing on that letter saying, please do something. So this is not just law enforcement screaming what we've been screaming for many years already. There's not one law enforcement agency in Monroe County that didn't say the reforms needed to occur. They needed to occur. And there's not one smart person in this room that says anytime you execute a plan, you start evaluating the plan and making adjustments to the plan to make it better. There's never been a perfect plan. But this one, refusal to acknowledge that there's some gaps in this and fill those gaps is what's driving us absolutely crazy. But in particular, it's hurting people. People are dying. We've heard a couple stories already. We've had to create new systems in public safety. In Monroe County, we've held almost 200 people on federal gun charges that we never held before. Because now we go out and get in a foot chase, we grab a young kid with a gun, it's illegal, we've created all that risk to the officers, we've created all that risk to the community, and we can't keep them in jail. 50% of the people caught with illegal guns in Monroe County are released no bail, low bail. they're released. This is a young kid carrying an illegal gun, thrown back to the streets of Rochester and saying, good luck, I hope it all works out for you. He's dead. We're going to kill someone. So now we wake up our federal magistrate, now we wake up our ATF agent, now we wake up our U.S. Marshal, and now we arraign them on federal charges, and we've been able to detain 200 people in Monroe County, get them off the streets, get them some help they need inside that jail, stabilize their life, and then maybe release them back to an organized system, as opposed to just releasing them on an appearance ticket. Over 200 people have been held on federal gun charges, and today we got almost 70 held on federal gun charges. Those are known gunslingers in Monroe County off the streets of Rochester. And you wonder why crime's going down. You got to give some credit to those officers that are out there in those foot chases 3 o'clock in the morning, risking everything. But when they give them an appearance ticket at the other end of it, they're definitely scratching their head, why are we doing this? Well, now we got a system that we can do it, but we're using a federal system. It's not designed. State law could fix that problem. This PROTECT Act fixed that problem. Another example is our poor people in Monroe County. We looked at 4 box stores in Monroe County. They allow us to look at their profit and loss statements. They allow us to look at their unreported theft. $7.3 million in almost 24 months was unreported theft of only 4 stores in Monroe County. Who's paying for that? By the grace of God, we can afford it. What about our poor people? Why are they paying for those larcenies in Monroe County? Why are they paying the inflation rate of larcenies? This is not ethical. This is not fair. All we're asking is for a common sense law. We've done a lot of study on this with the senator's help. We put a lot of thought in, could we get this a bipartisan bill? Could we actually get it across the finish line? And we're going to keep on pushing that envelope because that's our job. We're public safety. I say it, and I don't like to say it. If we're public safety, we're failing. I don't like to say that one bit, but we're failing our community. And this law will help step up to the plate. So anything we do to support that, any questions people have on this, anything we could do to make it a better bill, we're wide open. But we got to do something. There's never been the perfect plan. Yeah, we're walking around like we created the perfect plan in bail reform. And people are getting hurt, and it's costing a lot of poor people a lot of money. So anything we do to support that, I really appreciate the senator stepping up to the plate. And the next senator, Senator Close, it's a pleasure to introduce him and have him say a few words about this bill. Thank you, Senator.
Hi, I'm Senator Mark Walczyk from Watertown, Sackett's Harbor area, but I grew up in Brewerton, Cicero. I want to start off by thanking the 4th branch of government for being here. Your coverage of this event today helps. I would encourage you to ask important questions in your reporting. There are elected members, Senator Helming is doing this tour to talk about a very important piece of legislation that we want passed. She talked about a strategy that she has outside of the legislature to get it done by getting the governor to put it in her budget, because that's probably the most viable way to get it there. In your reporting, be sure to ask your assembly members. Ask Pam Hunter, ask Bill Magnarelli, ask Al Sturpey why this bill can't come to the floor in the state assembly. Ask Chris Ryan, ask Rachel May why this bill hasn't come out of committee in the New York State Senate, because this is bipartisan. This is for serving all New Yorkers. It has nothing to do with party politics. It is the common sense governance in our criminal justice system that every single New Yorker already expects. If you ask anyone on the street, they would not expect someone that has 4 felonies to get a 5th felony charge before a sheriff is figuring out how to get a federal gunslinging charge in order to actually hold them so they're not re-victimizing the same community that they continue to victimize. I also want to echo the remarks of the county executive here. He thanked law enforcement, and it was impressive when we were running the numbers to see crime actually going down. And I think it's a testament to the sheriff's offices and to the Syracuse PD, who's done a phenomenal job in a very difficult system, fighting against the state legislature and the governor to figure out how to keep their communities safe. But still, Syracuse has the 5th highest crime rate in New York State out of our cities. And we have double the crime rate here than the national average. So progress is being made, but they're fighting against the laws in the state of New York, and that is what Senator Pam Helming's bill looks to undo, to make sure that judges have the tool, the simple tool, to determine the dangerousness of someone who has committed a crime before they are released back into the public. It is absolutely what every citizen in New York State already expects our criminal justice system to do. So we can have the nation's best district attorney in Bill Fitzpatrick, and we can have the county executive supporting great sheriffs But until New York State fixes these laws, and they're not fighting to get through loopholes and manage just to keep crime down in our areas, they're going to continue to fight that fight. We want to let you know that we're on your side. We want to see criminal justice brought to your communities. We want them to be safe, wonderful places to live, work, and raise a family for generations to come. And please, for the reporters in the room, ask both sides of the aisle why this bill can't come to the floor. Please do that. And thank you very much for the opportunity to speak today. I'll turn it back to my colleague and leader, the esteemed, distinguished, and well-respected Senator Pam Hellman.
Thank you, Senator Walczak. Again, I want to thank everyone for being here, and I too want to thank all the members of law enforcement for being here and for the work that you do. It's incredible every single day, everything that you're doing to protect our communities. And at this time, I'd like to open up to any on-topic questions from the media. Nice. Well, that was easy. Let me just go back for one moment and point out something that the district attorney said, that New York State is the only state in our entire nation that doesn't allow the courts to consider dangerousness when they're contemplating letting someone go pre-trial. Think about that for a minute. Even California, liberal California, allows the courts to consider dangerousness. It's a simple fix, a simple step for us to be able to close this loop and make our communities safer for everyone. But, no questions?
I have one.
Oh, go ahead.
How will this act make trials more consistent across the state?
So I'm not sure how it will impact trials, but what it will make more consistent across the state is that pre-trial, it will require the judges to follow a standardized assessment form and evaluation to determine whether or not someone's a danger to themselves or to others and should be held pre-trial. And is there anything to add to that? No. Anyone else?
Talk more about the motivation for bringing these reforms.
So I think the motivation for bringing these reforms is, you heard a couple of stories today, but there are so many others where innocent people became victims. They were harmed, or worse, they lost their lives. You heard Sheriff Baxter also talk about the impact that this is having on affordability, the impact it's having on businesses and how it's driving up costs. So I talked to Sheriff Baxter one day, said, we got to do something. Enough is enough of all of these people being harmed, of kids losing their mom or dad when repeat offenders are set loose, put back out on the streets. And so we worked together. It took, how long did it, several months?
Yeah, we worked quite a process.
And it was an open process. These consortiums, like I said earlier, they're comprised of local business leaders, religious leaders, not-for-profit organizations, representatives, and elected officials from the state and the local level. And there was so much back and forth. And not only in our greater Finger Lakes area, but the sheriff took this across upstate New York and talked to the consortiums all over. And we had great feedback, and we collaborated. We wanted to make sure that this bill really and truly was bipartisan, and it didn't walk back those things that were important to the majority, to the governor and others. And I think we've crafted a very good, reasonable bill, again, something that will allow us to close those loopholes and keep our communities safer.
Just maybe to give a little context too on why this was necessary. Back when these initial laws were passed, part of the goal of the initial laws were to make sure that poor people weren't sitting in jail on low-level offenses because they don't have money. Okay, here locally, we thought it was a really good model. We had a bail expediter program where we would fund and make sure that didn't happen because it costs more money to have that individual in our corrections facility than have them out. Also, at the same time, a lot of those low-level offenses that those poor people would be in jail for were related to marijuana. Marijuana is legal. So essentially, in a way, that policy, when that changed, whether you're for or against it, essentially you have a bunch of people not going to jail for it anymore. So I think that those were the goals. But with that, and some of it, the district attorney referenced raise the age, and then discovery reform, which is a huge mandate on his office. But essentially, these were radical steps, very radical steps in one way, changing a whole system. And essentially, what has happened for hardened criminals is the reason why you see 14-year-olds and 15-year-olds with gun charges and pulling the trigger, and not 19 and 20 and 21 and 25-year-olds, is because the hardened criminals understand the laws, and they understand that the 14-year-old is going to be treated a lot differently if caught than that. So I think overall what you're seeing now is just common sense. You have Democrat and Republican sheriffs here today. You have senators who understand that the same people who pass some of these laws that quite frankly don't work well have pride in authorship, and they won't go through and try to fix it because of that pride of authorship. They don't want to admit maybe they have to pivot. And so this is a way to set standards for judges as well when they're looking at the dangerousness factor, because believe it or not all judges are created equal. And in Rochester, I think you have a serious situation going on where my colleague Adam Bello is taking on a judge because they are not following the law when it comes to some of these issues. So I think overall, this is the context of why this is so important. And what this will do is make sure that dangerous people don't get let out on the streets. And I think that's the bottom line, and that will help drive down crime much further, and it will help prevent victims, right? You can't necessarily see all the data when these laws are made, and it will make the job so much easier for these men and women here who are having a hard time right now. They're having a hard time recruiting into their ranks because of what you heard with the sheriff. You're chasing down a guy with a gun, you're risking your life, and you got a young family, and then what? They're getting let out right away? This makes no sense. This is not a way to run a community, right?
Let me just add one thing if I can, Senator. Sheriff Alexander, Victoria, made a good point that I want to emphasize, and that's not only the dangerous aspect of it, but it's the economic impact of it. A community thrives if they have good jobs, good schools, and a lot of the marginalized communities in the city of Syracuse, you have people that don't have access to transportation, and they rely on neighborhood stores. And as the sheriff pointed out, these neighborhood stores are closing. They can't afford it. Anybody try to buy a shaving cream or a razor at a Walmart recently? You got to wait 20 minutes to get a clerk. Rite Aid is closing stores left and right in the city of Syracuse, and you can blame them all they want about their quote-unquote corporate responsibility. Well, they're publicly held corporations. They're supposed to make money, and you can't make money when you have to build in a factor of 15% of my profits go to shoplifters. We had a guy. His first name's escaping me. I'll always remember his last name. His last name was Moses. And believe me, if Moses had been around in the time of the parting of the Red Sea, he would have come down with 8 commandments instead of 10, because the guy was arrested for his 28th shoplifting charge. And he was out on no bail on the other 27. No civilized society can operate that way. 28 pending petty larcenies? And the guy is just causing havoc all throughout my county. So, again, Senator, thank you for being here. And
Thank you.
I'm not getting old, but Senator Walczyk's father used to work for me, so that's I am good. I guess Sheriff Maciel from Oneida County, thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Chief Aragano, Tim Burtis, Chairman of the Ledge, and the legendary speaking of legends, the legendary Todd Hood from Madison County.
Any other questions? No? Well, thank you all for being here today. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you very much.
Good
Nice
job.
job. Thank you.
Good job.
Thank you.